sight of the little gas jet, she almost cried. Well, they had to be faced. It was very like bicycling up a steep hill, but there was not the satisfaction of flying down on the other side. Her own room at last. She closed the door, lit the gas, took off her hat and coat, skirt, blouse, unhooked her old flannel dressing gown from behind the door, pulled it on, then unlaced her boots. On consideration, her stockings were not wet enough to change. She went over to the washstand. The jug had not been filled again today. There was just enough water to soak the sponge, and the enamel was coming off the basin. That was the second time she had scratched her chin. It was just 7 o'clock. If she pulled the blind up and put out the gas, it was much more restful. Rosabel did not want to read, so she knelt down on the floor, pillowing her arms on the window-sill. Just one little sheet of glass between her and the great wet world outside. She began to think of all that had happened during the day. Would she ever forget that awful woman in the grey mackintosh who had wanted a trimmed motor cap, something purple with something rosy each side? Or the girl who had tried on every hat in the shop and then said she would call in tomorrow and decide definitely? Rosabel could not help smiling. The excuse was worn so thin. But there had been one other. A girl with beautiful red hair and a white skin, and eyes the colour of that green ribbon shot with gold they had got from Paris last week. Rosabel had seen her electric brougham at the door. A man had come in with her, quite a young man, and so well dressed. "What is it exactly that I want, Harry?" she had said, as Rosabel took the pins out of her hat, untied her veil, and gave her a hand mirror. "You must have a black hat," he had answered. "A black hat with a feather that goes right round it, and then round your neck, and ties in a bow under your chin, and the ends tuck into your belt. A decent-sized feather." The girl glanced at Rosabel laughingly. "Have you any hats like that?" They had been very hard to please. Harry would demand the impossible, and Rosabel was almost in despair. Then she remembered the big untouched box upstairs. "Oh, one moment, madam," she had said. "I think perhaps I can show you something that will please you better." She had run up breathlessly, cut the cords, scattered the tissue paper, and yes, there was the very hat. Rather large, soft with a great curled feather, and a black velvet rose, nothing else. They had been charmed. The girl had put it on, and then handed it to Rosabel. "Let me see how it looks on you," she said, frowning a little, very serious indeed. Rosabel turned to the mirror and placed it on her brown hair, then faced them. "Oh, Harry, isn't it adorable?" the girl cried. "I must have that." She smiled again at Rosabel. "It suits you beautifully." A sudden, ridiculous feeling of anger had seized Rosabel. She longed to throw the lovely, perishable thing in the girl's face, and bent over the hat, flushing. "It's exquisitely finished off inside, madam," she said. The girl swept out to her brougham, and left Harry to pay and bring the box with him. "I shall go straight home and put it on before I come out to lunch with you," Rosabel heard her say. The man leant over her as she made out the bill, and then as he counted the money into her hand. "Ever been painted?" he said. "No," said Rosabel shortly, realizing the swift change in his voice, the slight tinge of insolence, of familiarity. "Oh, well, you ought to be," said Harry. "You've got such a damned pretty little figure." Rosabel did not pay the slightest attention. How handsome he had been. She had thought of no one else all day. His face fascinated her. She could see clearly his fine straight eyebrows, and his hair grew back from his forehead with just the slightest suspicion of crisp curl. His laughing, disdainful mouth. She saw